What's up, everyone? Just wanted to cover a few things. The last time I got on here, I had a horrible connection and nothing was really working out. So I hope everyone's doing okay out there. And I want to take a moment to talk about Afghanistan, only because I've been hit up with 1,000 questions. And I do want to give some response, but instead of just telling you how it is or how it should be, I'd rather just pose some questions and you can kind of decide for yourself. And this is only based on my limited experience. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, the age of 8, all the way up to high school. I came back to the States for high school. Then I joined the military, and 20 years of my SEAL career was spent in Muslim countries. So I say that not because it gives me some kind of credential to be an expert on it, because I'm not. Like I said, growing up in Saudi and then working in Muslim countries, I still don't understand it. So I always find it interesting when all these experts come out, especially the ones that didn't serve or the politician, and they've got all their opinions on, what's going on over there, when the reality is a culture that's been around for centuries. It literally would take that amount of time in order to really understand it. Love the glasses. Thanks, buddy. I can't see anything anymore. So I'm just going to take a moment and not waste a lot of your time, but just pose some questions. So first question I've got for you. The media will sit there and, exacerbate pretty much anything. I think we know that. It doesn't matter if you're on the right with Fox or if you're on the left with CNN. All of it's bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And there's a reason why I don't get into politics, because I don't like politicians. I don't like the right. I don't like the left. I feel like anybody who runs for an office, they end up becoming snakes once they're in the system. They go in making $1.50, they come out millionaires. And whatever good intentions they had usually gets twisted by the system in itself. So I think we see it time and time again. But the first question I'd pose to you as it relates to Afghanistan is, do you think the Taliban took the country in 11 days, or do you think the country was given to them in 11 days? Is it unreasonable to think that a Muslim brother talking to another Muslim brother, and let's say this one has the Afghan hat on and this one's got a Taliban hat on, and they know that we're going to be transitioning out of their country, is it too far of a thought to think that that agreement was put in place before we even transitioned? Just a question. When I see things in the media like our occupation of Afghanistan has prevented 20 years of terrorism, bullshit. Okay, that is a piece of the pie. But the reality is the networks we stomped on in Yemen, the networks we stomped on in Somalia, the Levant, the islands of Indonesia, we have been stomping on terrorism in all these other countries. Because that's where they were forced to go when we occupied Afghanistan. But our sole occupation of Afghanistan is not what prevented terrorism. We've still been fighting it. They were just forced to go to other countries. We disrupted and destroyed their networks, and anytime they stood up a training camp, we fucking crushed it. It didn't matter where it was on this planet. So the other thing that kind of is irritating is when they say, oh, great, there's going to be another 9/11. It's kind of connected to what I just said. There were plenty of opportunities for another 9/11, but we've learned how to get a hold of it or get ahead of it. The country has definitely been really good, okay, at basically remotely dealing with bad guys, whether it's sending in special operations and drones, and then intelligent collection has come light years. So we can keep track of things even if we're not there. The other thing I hear about is how Afghanistan is going to become a terrorist state again. It was always a terrorist state. Why do you think we had thousands of fucking troops there to begin with? It's like there's a little bit of common sense that needs to be injected into what's being said out there. Handing it, the Taliban taking over and, all of that cultural stuff will never be able to change. We go around trying to promote democracy the best we can, but sometimes it doesn't work. And that's what we're left with is, a corrupt Afghan military and corrupt and government basically bowing down to Taliban once we left. And it was inevitable. It wasn't a surprise to me. Us pulling out of Afghanistan has been going on for several presidencies now. So it's nothing new. If you were a contractor working there for a humanitarian deal, you knew we were leaving, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't try and help Americans. I'm just saying, like, at an individual level, you probably should have had some common sense, or at least some wit about you to go and say, maybe I should get the fuck out of here. It's a complicated thing when you're in someone else's country trying to sell them on what works for us. But the reality is, what works for us may not work for other countries. But the one thing that I will say that's wrong is to time, date, stamp your departure. As you guys know, with anything as it relates to personal security, I'm an advocate of don't post anything online when you're leaving on vacation or you're leaving your home. Don't post any pictures real time when you're on vacation, right? It kind of baffles me that we time date stamp, hey, we're leaving on this day, because that's just bad security, right? Ideally, everyone should have left the country and then we announce it. We did that with the military. The news wasn't exploiting the military departure all these years, because it's literally taken years for us to rotate out all of that military. And the State Department should have been embedded into that phased out approach over the last year or two. I don't understand why they weren't. And then any other Americans left there, have been put in danger because we time date stamp shit, and we shouldn't do that. And the only thing I can relate it to is that when we go on target, probably the biggest secret is what time are we arriving? They can know our tactics, they can know our weapons, they can know everything about us. But as long as they never know when we're coming, then we'll win. And I think our departure should have been treated the same way. Should have been kept secret. And then once everyone was out and safe, then we announce it. So anyway, those are just initial thoughts, food for thought. I don't know if right, wrong, doesn't matter. I'm just throwing it out there because I've had a lot of questions on what my thoughts are as it relates to Afghanistan. And it really boils down to, the media is never been all that accurate, and just take it for what it is. The media makes everything so much more worse. I remember one time I was sitting in Sanaa, and the news was reporting that the fucking city was on fire and there was all these riots. And the footage they showed was actually old footage of all kinds of hate and discontent going on in Baghdad. And I was looking out my window going, there's nothing going on here right now. And I don't know why they're reporting that. So just take everything, grain of salt, as they say. Okay, so enough on Afghanistan. Book, we got the new book coming out pretty soon. If you want a sneak peek at the cover before I actually do a cover release, the publisher already put it on Amazon. So if you search The Rugged Life, you'll see it on there, which is all these badass skills on how to be more self-sufficient. Whether you are a believer in pandemics or not, I think we all learned one thing, is that we probably need to have some skills that allow us to fend for ourselves. And I'm not talking just specifically, combating a bad guy that comes through your front door or surviving an avalanche, which is most of the stuff I've focused on up to this point. It's really about how do you really take care of yourself. And so I've broken down hundreds of skills in this next book on how to be your own first responder, how to be your own butcher, how to be your own gardener. I mean, some of it is a little out there for me, considering 100 deadly skills has kind of been my thing. But this is all about surviving for the long term, and it complements the rest of the stuff I've done, which is all about surviving seconds, minutes, or days. This is making survival a lifestyle, and the gratification and satisfaction you get out of it will be pretty cool. So it's called The Rugged Life. It's not due till next spring, but if you want a sneak peek at the cover before I actually do the cover release on social media, go take a look. I think you'll dig it. And then the last thing I want to cover is the podcast. Can you survive this podcast? The last discussion I had, the last 3 or 4 discussions I've had have been pretty badass. One with Ed Calderon. Anybody who doesn't know him, go check him out. Ed's manifesto is his what the hell is it? Hang little. Somebody say it. Your handle. That's the word. Ed's manifesto is his handle. So a great discussion on escape and kind of the philosophies of getting yourself out of trouble using like hood rat tactics, as he says. And then I had a great discussion just currently with Michael Easter. He wrote a book called The Comfort Zone. Once again, we've all gotten used to using an app and having food delivered to our door and any show we want, and that like instant gratification thing, and that we need to get out and get hard again. So he wrote the book, The Comfort Crisis, and it's a great interview. Check that out. But there's probably 15 plus episodes now since I've taken over Can You Survive This podcast. It's out there that are worth listening to. A lot of great survival information embedded in the conversations. And then, of course, each show has a survival scenario built into it that I put the guests through so that you get to learn their thought processes. And by doing so, what I'm hoping is that you guys start running your own scenarios through your mind, which will sensitize your mind and calibrate it to when a good day goes bad, and hopefully get yourself out of it. That's pretty much it. Let me see what questions we got over here. Glad you're discussing this. You know, like I said, I usually avoid politics because I don't like them. But I feel like, you know, drawing out logic is probably the right thing to do, especially as it relates to the fight. You know, on that note, once again, not to beat a dead horse, but when they say veterans were basically went to Afghanistan for nothing, once again, I throw the bullshit flag. You know, we knew what our initial target was going in Afghanistan. It was bin Laden. In order to get through bin Laden, we had to go through AQ. In order to get to AQ, we had to go through Taliban. That was the battle order in order to get to him. And so every battle where somebody was wounded or died was not for nothing, okay? Because we're leaving doesn't mean that those individual battles, and in order for us to get to bin Laden and whack that motherfucker, does not mean that somehow it's all for waste. It's ridiculous. And to think for a second that Afghanistan was the cure to terrorism is also fucking stupid, because we still were battling it and lost guys in Yemen and Somalia, the Levant, Indonesia, a lot of different places around the globe in order to keep the homeland safe. So Afghanistan wasn't the cure. Don't kid yourself for a fucking second. It drives me nuts. Okay, back to questions. Sorry, I get off on tangents here. Podcast is excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, on that note, if you want to go give it some stars and some funny comments, that would be great, because I'll be reading comments here pretty soon. There's some bad ones too. I like the bad ones. Don't leave a bad one. I just like the bad ones. What else we got here? Why are some of these hidden? They like hide them. Is it because you use a bad word or something? Let's see here. How to escape from the 18th floor of a 20-story apartment when you see bad guys coming up from the lift and the staircase. Initial thoughts, is it's far-fetched, but, one, if you can go to the roof and they've got external fire ladders, that's one way to escape a multi-level building, because a lot of these buildings, especially in the United States, have some kind of exit ladder system, right? And you leverage that, keeps you out of trouble if bad guys are coming up, and you go down. I tell people all the time when they stay in hotels to stay in like the third or fourth floor, because it doesn't raise any attention to anyone if you ask room service for 4 or 5 extra sets of sheets, right? And if it's king size, which I always get rooms with king size beds, knowing that from corner to corner diagonally of a king size bed is 12 feet. So the average floor is 10 feet. So now you've got a foot on one end and a foot on the other to try to basically tie your big whammy knot, the knot that can't be undone. And then you can create that old school kind of rope, that sheet rope, you can throw out a window. Make sure you anchor it to a good solid piece of furniture, and then off you go. But if you're stuck in those bigger buildings, just make sure you know how to get to the roof and use the external ladder systems designed for fire in order to get yourself out of trouble. That's just initial thoughts. Think of all the scum that were cleaned off the face of the earth. That makes me feel better. Yes, true. We a lot of people, bad guys, all went bye-bye like they should have during our time over there. And once again, lends to any veteran who went and served of how important their job was. Coming in late, interested to hear what you have to say. Love your books and your podcast. Awesome. I appreciate all that support. I really do. What else? More kudos to the podcast. I believe it. Did I ever do any winter training Norway? No, I would have loved to, but once the wars kicked off, all of those good deals kind of went down the drain. We ended up a lot of desert warfare, though. But yeah, the good deals kind of snuck away. Do you think the military has softened as far as training as opposed to 30 years ago? No, look, if there's anyone who respects like the soldiers of world wars, right? World War II specifically. I mean, my haircut it's a World War II undercut. Some people say I look like a soccer player in Europe, but it's a World War II undercut. It's just my haircut alone is to pay homage to the soldiers of World War II. And I think those fuckers were hard as rocks. And have you ever held an M1 Grand? I mean, the thing I don't know what the weight is, got to be 20 pounds. And then when you add the ammunition to it, I mean, that's a heavy rifle. And just to run around with that alone and not taking into account the winter battles, the summer battles in Europe and going up against the Nazis, I mean, they were hard, right? What we've done is we haven't necessarily gotten softer, but we've definitely gotten smarter, and we've leveraged technology to really drive the train. So I think that's helped a lot. So I think World War II dudes were definitely harder than we could ever be because we get to leverage a lot of advancements that they didn't have. It's pretty simple. We went to both Taliban, AQ, and got BL. But what about the past 10 years? Yeah, I agree. I mean, I personally think once you killed bin Laden, it was a good time to depart. It would have put a nice little exclamation point on our time there. But I think what happened is, as time moved forward, couple things. Capitalism, we're a capitalistic country, right? And once we were in Afghanistan, I think there was probably a lot of politics involved once again. It was like, well, why don't we just stay, continue occupying? There's a lot of companies in the United States that benefit off of war, as we know. And then second to that, we were already spreading democracy, and I think we were hoping for change. And I think that's what lent to, staying longer in Afghanistan past the bin Laden operation. But I mean, that's just my 2 cents. Capitalism and democracy is usually the big 2 reasons we go anywhere. Some don't admit to it, but it's true. My dad was a World War II vet. Hey, that's awesome. Thanks for his service. Ever been to South America? You see any of us military involvement there, bigger level in the future? Yeah, I think our involvement has always been there. It just doesn't get highlighted. Keep in mind, the only things and now me being a civilian, the only things we ever know about is whatever the media chooses to put a spotlight on. So there's lots of good things going on all over the globe that prevents future attacks, and it keeps us safe here. And just because we don't hear about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, So keep that in mind. The other thing I'll add to that is leaving Afghanistan. I'd pose this question like I did at the beginning. Who would you rather have in charge there, the Taliban, Chinese, or Russia? Because all three were definitely bidding for that country. And so, China's already, in a lot of different places, and they're doing a good job taking over the planet in a very covert way. And that's the scary part. But we all know that the Taliban, fucked up the Brits in the 1800s. They pushed out the Russians in more recent history, and we've definitely contended with them, and they're a pain in the ass. So if there's anyone you'd put in charge of Afghanistan, is put a pain in the ass to keep the Russians and the Chinese out. I'm obviously kidding to a certain degree, but it's something to think about, right? Sorry for coming in late. Do you think China had any influence AFG because there was a neutral resource? Yeah, I mean, they want the lead, right? I mean, there's a lot of rare earth metals in Afghanistan that everybody wants, but it doesn't mean we're not going to get it anymore. I mean, we're not dumb. We're still going to probably take advantage of the natural resources they have, just like every other country that decides to trade with the Taliban. But you got it. That's the decision has to make: is are we going to do trade agreements with those guys? Oh boy. Anyway, okay. So hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm trying to get better at being more consistent with these lives and answering your questions. And then the last one there. Do you think an EMP strike is possible with what all is going on? Okay, I will leave on this note. Now, this is the scary one. The Chinese have, I believe, just 2, and that's all they need. 2 submarines that have an incredible EMP, electromagnetic pulse capability. And I was reading a study somewhere that they could literally put 1 submarine just off the East Coast, 1 off the West Coast. And if they were to fire those EMPs off at the same time, the EMP waves would meet basically in the middle of the United States and just wipe shit out. That's the scary part, okay? I know we're all worried about Afghanistan turning into a terrorist state, which it already was, and that's why we were there. It's not turning into anything. It was already a terrorist state. But if Chinese put those 2 submarines on either coastline, holy shit, these things don't work. The thing I'm talking to you on won't work. That's scary, right? You won't be able to get groceries delivered to your front door, that's for sure. And that's why my next book, Rugged Life, will fit you when things go south. So make sure you go check it out on Amazon. It won't be for sale. I don't know if it's for sale or not, but you can check out the book cover there, The Rugged Life. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. I always love it when somebody corrects there for there. That's good English. I love it. All right, you guys take it easy, and I'll talk to you again soon.